Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I've been wanting to do some wrap-up videos for the year, for 2019, so I thought I would start off with some series that I binge read over the course of the year. I have two of them that I loved, one of them I really enjoyed, and then a few others that I'll mention. I don't know if I should count them just because I only read 2 books in the series, but I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt to include them. I am a huge series binge reader. Like if I find a new series that I end up loving, I will just continue reading as much as I can, either until I get tired of it, get bored of it, or the series finishes. Usually it's because of the latter that makes me stop reading, which is why I love a lot of paranormals and fantasies. They always have really long series, and surprisingly all of the series that I binged were not really series that followed one couple. They were all standalones. Let me know if you're binge readers as well, or you don't have the patience to read like 5 books in a row, because that's what I did when I discovered the Hathaway series by Lacey Kleypas. I binge read all 5 books earlier this year, actually while I was in Europe. I was backpacking for a month in Europe, and instead of, you know, exploring all these new countries and cities, I would settle down and just read. I mean, I tried to save it whenever we would have to fly or take the train, bus, whatever. But yeah, I literally just read all 5 books back to back and loved it so much. This is definitely one of my top favorite series that I read this year, and definitely one of my new favorites from Lacey Kleypas. So the Hathaway series is historical romance, and it follows the 5 Hathaway siblings. So the first book in the Hathaway series is Mine Till Midnight, and this one is amazing. It's my second favorite book in the series, very close to the top one. And this one is about Cam and Amelia. Cam was actually a secondary character where he was first introduced in Devil in Winter. That was my first book from Lacey Kleypas, and the way that the book ended for Cam, I knew he had to be getting his own story, but I didn't realize it would be in a whole different series and not with the heroine that he seemed into in Devil in Winter. Instead, Cam falls in love with Amelia and the rest of the Hathaways. They have such good chemistry and banter together. I loved that Cam kind of becomes the father figure for the rest of the Hathaways because they've lost their parents, but obviously with Amelia it's a different story. They have such a great relationship together. Cam is just so romantic and passionate. He's definitely one of my favorite heroes from Lacey Kleypas. It's an amazing start to an incredible series. If you haven't read it yet, you should, and then binge read the rest of the Hathaways. Book 2 in the series, Seduce Me at Sunrise, which I actually own. This one is a lot more angsty and intense than book 1. Cam definitely provided a lot more humor and lightheartedness in Mine Till Midnight as opposed to Kev, the hero in this book. Kev just does not think that he's good enough for Win, and he is so tortured over it. Of course, Kev doesn't know or realize that Win is also in love with him and has been since he entered her life. Growing up, Win actually had an illness, and that had everyone treating her really delicately, including Kev. But once she is cured of her sickness, she basically gets a new life, and in this new life all she wants is Kev, so she's definitely the pursuer in this book. Kev tries to hold back, but I mean, when the love of his life is trying to love him back, there's not much he can do about it except finally be with her. Their book is super emotional, super angsty, and it's so good. And then book 3 is called Tempt Me at Twilight, and so I had actually read the Ravenel series before I read the Hathaway, so this book reminded me a lot of Marrying Winterborn because this one also has a kind of shy heroine and a much more aggressive kind of hero and a self-made man. In this case, Harry is a hotel mogul. Poppy and Harry enter a marriage of convenience, mainly because Harry is kind of obsessed with Poppy since he first lays eyes on her, and once he wants something, he gets it, and that is Poppy. I was honestly taken aback by how obsessed Harry was. I didn't really expect it, but he is quite the manipulative guy. So if you love a good obsessed alpha hero, Harry is perfect. If you love opposites attract, this one is also a great one. And then book 4 is about the sole brother of the Hathaways, and it is Married by Morning. This one is Leo's story. Leo has come a very long way since the very beginning of the series, where he was kind of a sack of shit. He didn't do much, but since that first book, he has definitely tried to make up for his lack of anything for his sisters. He ends up falling for Catherine, who is the Hathaway sisters' companion. Catherine kind of hates Leo, but Leo realizes that he actually really wants Catherine. This one is actually my least favorite of the series. I mean, it wasn't bad. I never really loved Leo's character, sadly, but I did love Catherine's. I do know though that a lot of people do consider this one their favorite, so I am definitely in the minority for this book. And then last, my absolute favorite of the series is Love in the Afternoon. This one is Beatrix's story. I think she is the youngest sibling. This is the kind of romance where animals play a huge part, just because Beatrix has always connected more with animals than other people. Her story is pretty unique actually. As a favor for her friend, she writes these letters to the friend's kind of intended man, pretending to be that friend, and she ends up falling in love with Christopher through all of these letters. Like, they've never met, but she falls in love with him and he kind of falls in love with her, except it's not her. The hero, Christopher, is a soldier, so these letters are basically the only thing that's keeping him grounded. So when he comes back from the war, all he wants to do is find the woman who wrote these letters to him and marry her. And the whole book, you're basically just waiting for Christopher to realize the truth and realize that the person that Christopher has been writing letters to is none other than Beatrix. I just love these two together. They are the most adorable thing ever. The way Beatrix is with her animals is super cute. She actually owns this hedgehog called Medusa. I love that hedgehog so much. And then the way that Christopher also grows to love the animals because they're Beatrix's animals just warms my heart so much. Christopher also has his own dog that helped him deal with PTSD during the war and after the war. These two are just so perfect. My top favorite couple of the series. So the series was literally the perfect series to binge read. Like, you fall in love with all of these characters, all of these romances, and this family as a whole. I loved how family was super important to them, especially since they lost their parents. So if you haven't read the Hathaway series yet, do it, because it's one of Lisa Kleypas's best series ever. I think the Hathaways took me about a week or maybe less to finish. Honestly, it takes me a day or less to finish a book when I get started on a series. This next series that I binge read is also a historical romance series. For some reason, historical romances are just so easy for me to binge read. This series is actually really long, but I only read the first 4 books, which are about the core 4 brothers, the Mackenzies, before everything after the 4th book becomes more about their cousins, I think. Not sure, but the first 4 books were so good. The first 2 were my absolute favorites. It starts off with the madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, Ian and Beth's story. Ian is the youngest Mackenzie brother, I believe, and he's always been seen as very eccentric and doesn't understand social cues. So, I mean, obviously as a modern reader, we can recognize that Ian was probably some form of autistic, but his parents, well, his awful father didn't really care about that and just saw him as crazy and sent him to a crazy asylum. He doesn't really talk anymore, especially with people who aren't his family. But as soon as he meets Beth, the heroine, he is very much into her and wants her for his wife. I loved Ian. He is so precious and I loved his alpha tendencies, but they just have an amazing romance. I can see why so many people love this book. This series has been on my TBR for years and it is so good. It blew me away, made me like a huge fan of Jennifer Ashley. And so of course I ended up reading the the next 3 books in the series about Ian's 3 older brothers. The second book is my favorite. It's a second chance romance, so not surprised. It is so angsty, so much good groveling. I loved it. It's called Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage. I love a hero who fights for the heroine, and Mac has definitely grown to be that kind of hero. Mac has to earn Isabella's forgiveness, make her fall back in love with him, and stay married to him. And then in the next book, The Many Sins of Lord Cameron, Cam is a big horse guy. He's basically a horse whisperer, and he's a single dad. His story is kind of sort of a second chance romance. Like, the heroine, they met years before and they almost got started, but didn't. So now is their second chance. Unfortunately, this time around, Cameron does not believe in marriage anymore. He is definitely a more broody and more of a bad boy compared to the first 2 brothers, although I don't think he has anything on the 4th brother, the oldest one. I really enjoy the heroine too. She's kind of doing some undercover spy work for the government or something like that. And then the last book, The Duke's Perfect Wife, is about the oldest brother and the new duke of the family. This is once again kind of sort of a second chance romance. The main characters were engaged and she was the only woman that Hart ever loved, but she left him. Sadly, I didn't really love this one as much as I did the other ones. I just didn't like Hart all that much. And I wasn't really that into their second chance romance either. Like, I didn't really believe the love on his part. But if you love a good brooding alpha hero, he is the broodiest and the alphaist of all 4 brothers. I'm sad I didn't love him more, but the series as a whole is fantastic. If you love Highlander romances, Scottish heroes, you will love the Mackenzies. This next series is finally not historical romance. It is actually a mafia romance series about 3 brothers, and it is the Dangerous Royal series by Annika Martin. The first book, Dark Mafia Prince, is okay. I didn't really love it, but I was still intrigued enough to read about the other 2 brothers. But it starts off the whole premise about these 3 brothers who were part of a mafia family, a like top mafia crime family, whose parents were brutally murdered. They've had to live off the grid until they were old enough and strong enough to basically take back the throne. The first book is an enemies to lovers romance. Alexio, the oldest, is the heir to the mafia family, and he falls for his enemy's daughter. She's the daughter of the person who called the hit on Alexio's parents. So it's very star-crossed lovers kind of romance. Like I said, it was okay. Kind of wanted to love it more, but I didn't. But the second book is where I really started loving the series. That one's called Wicked Mafia Prince, and it has an almost nun heroine. Victor, the hero, kills the love of his life because he thought that she betrayed him. But now he sees this nun who he caught on camera at a brothel, I think. Now he thinks that that nun is the dead love of his life. So he's kind of obsessed with finding out who she is. That one was so intense, really hot. I really enjoyed it. But the third book is my favorite of the series. This one is Savage Mafia Prince, and it is about the youngest brother, Kiro, who has pretty much been missing since they all were kids. One of the main goals throughout the first 2 books is finding Kiro, and now they come really close in this third book. Kiro has basically become this kind of savage monster because of all the torture that was done to him growing up. This third book, this last book, felt the most suspenseful and intense, and why I loved it the most. I just thought this was a really great mafia series. I loved all 3 brothers and the bond that they have with each other. And also, I just remembered that at the end of the last book, the villain of the series kind of sort of becomes a good guy. So now, I mean, he's basically an anti-hero, so now I really want a book for him, for Lazarus. The author has mentioned that she wants to write a book for him, but just not anytime soon, which is so sad. But still, whenever she writes that book for Lazarus, I am reading it. So those are 3 series that I ended up binge reading this year and loving. I do have a couple others that aren't like quite my favorites, but I do want to mention them. The first one is the Vaudry Brothers by Alice Coldbreath. This one is actually a medieval historical romance. It was okay. I never really loved them, but they weren't bad either. The heroes were just too much of like assholes for me to truly love them. Like if the heroines didn't grow to have spines, the heroes would just walk all over them. If you're used to like really overbearing heroes, you might enjoy these ones. They definitely had kind of old school feels to it. And then this last series, I wasn't sure if I should have included it just because I read the first book like 2 years ago and then finished the rest of the series, the other 2 books, this year. It is the Lost Platoon series by Monica Murphy. This is romantic suspense and so good. I was surprised by how much I loved it just because the first book, it was really hard to get into, but once I did, I ended up really enjoying it. But I generally don't read that much romantic suspense. It's not like a favorite genre of mine, but these ones were really great. They were heavy on the suspense and like the action kind of stuff, but I didn't mind it. The first book is Going Dark. The first book is Going Dark, the second one Off the Grid, and then last is Out of Time. Lots of sexy alpha heroes who go undercover and do military stuff. They're all Navy SEALs, total badasses, and their heroines are really great too. The last book in the series, Out of Time, is my particular favorite just because of the second chance romance in it. It kind of has 2 romances in this one. I mean, that second chance romance couple is the one that's been teased like throughout the series. So if you do want to read this one, I would suggest reading the other 2 books first, just because a lot of what happens, like the reunion, all the tension between them, why they're on the rocks and pretty much hate each other, happens in the first 2 books. The second one is actually a best friend's younger sister kind of romance. This was really great. This was the one that made me really love this series. So if you're looking for some really good romantic suspenses, highly recommend these ones. So those were the series that I ended up binge reading in 2019. I found some really amazing series this year I'm so happy with. Jennifer Ashley was a new to me author until I read the Mackenzie series, so now I am a huge fan and will eventually read the rest of those books. And then of course Lisa Kleypas, always some fantastic reads. I think that's the one series where I'm completely all caught up on. Like the Ravenels, I still have a couple that I need to read. I'm not finished with the Wallflowers, surprisingly. I still have to read the second and fourth books in that series. And then that Mafia series by Annika Martin, super hot, dark, sexy, a really great mafia series. Let me know about some of the series that you binge read this year, if you read any of the series that I did. I'd love to know your thoughts on them. I'll leave a link to all the books and series that I mentioned in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you all next time. Bye!